Hi there, it's Paul Carman with you once again, and welcome to the second episode of Keysound TV. And before we go any further this month, can I just thank all of you who took the trouble to either email us or phone us just to say how much you'd enjoyed the first episode. Believe me, that means an awful lot to us because we do try and put a lot of time and effort into this, but most importantly, it hopefully means that we're going along the right lines with this type of production. And if you are enjoying it, all I would ask you to do is keep spreading the word for us. We've actually seen a considerable rise in the number of subscribers since the first episode went out. So we're very grateful to you spreading the word for us. Now, there's not an awful lot more I need to say at this introduction other than we've got an absolute packed hour for you once again with lots of different different themes and topics for you. But we're going to begin with something which we sat down, Steve, Ria and myself, and we came up with this idea that maybe as customers, you would love to know a little bit more about the companies that produce these products that you've all come to love and know so well. So each month we're going to highlight one of the companies that we deal with, and we're just going to take you through a brief history of that company, and hopefully it will show you why they've ended up where they have in this wonderful world of keyboards and pianos. Now, the first company we're going to take a look at today is Casio. Now, a very quick survey for you, quick question. If I was to say, name me any product that you associate with Casio, I would say, like me, like millions of others, you'll probably say watches and calculators. And of course, you wouldn't be wrong in saying that. But do you realise what a huge player Casio are in this world of musical instruments, particularly keyboards and pianos? And what I know this next little 10 minutes will show you is what an amazing innovator of products Casio has been over the years and continues to be so. So you are going to enjoy this, and I think you're going to be surprised, as I was when I sort of delved through and learnt all this information. Sit back, enjoy a quick 10-minute history of Casio. The slideshow you're about to see was produced first in 2019, so please bear that in mind when you look at some of the dates. It all began in 1957, so 64 years ago now. Then the four Casio brothers launched what they called a compact calculator. The fact that you would have needed a medium-sized van to transport the keypad and control unit indicates that their idea of compact differs so much from today. And take a look at the price, £3,000 in 1957. Now, how many of us had that handheld colour LCD TV in the early 80s? I did, that's for sure. A truly incredible product in its day. And do you realise that the first consumer level digital camera was a Casio? And it had this unique feature of being able to flip the viewfinder and lens through 180 degrees. Basically, it means Casio invented the selfie way before any of the mobile manufacturers. Casio watches have become brand leaders in their field, and once again Casio came up with a first, the G-Shock, the world's first shock-resistant watches. The early 80s also saw Casio launch their first ever home keyboard. In fact, it was the first ever home single keyboard, the Casio Tone 201, and they continued through the 80s to produce so many iconic and innovative keyboard products. The Casio CZ101 synth remains a very sought after vintage synth keyboard. 1986 also saw Casio enter the world of digital drums. So if you're young and trendy like me, then you will recognise Pulp's lead singer Jarvis Cocker. They had a huge hit in 1995 with a song called Common People, which sold almost 500,000 copies. Here's the thing. It was originally conceived and written on a Casio MT500 portable keyboard with its innovative drum pads on board. Making music accessible for everyone has always been at the forefront of Casio's ethos, and over the years they've produced many instruments to encourage very young children to take up music. 2004 saw the launch of the Privia digital piano range, which set them on the road to becoming an established player in the digital piano market. This resulted in another world first in 2015 with the launch of the world's first truly collaborative digital hybrid piano. Casio's decision to work alongside world-renowned piano manufacturer Bechstein now sees them forge their place as a really serious digital piano manufacturer. Featuring samples of 3 of the finest pianos in the world and with an action co-developed with Bechstein, the Casio Grand Hybrids are amazing instruments to play. The keys are even constructed from the same wood as is used in the construction of Bechstein pianos. If you look at the Bechstein pianos, they carry the royal seal of approval, as they've held the warrant to supply the British royal family and other royal families with pianos. This action, which has been co-developed with Casio and Bechstein, features true grand piano length keys for a truly authentic piano playing feel. Coming right up to date, the PXS1000 is the world's slimmest 88-note hammer action digital piano with speakers, and comes in 3 stunning gloss finishes: black, white and my favourite, the red. Children's starter keyboards with their own carrying handles, just further evidence of Casio's ability to continuously innovate. The brand new Casio CTX series, the CTX700, 3000 and 5000, offer amazing value for money and have sounds and features that will keep players of all standards happy. And 2021 sees the arrival of a 61-note piano designed for new players of all ages. So as you see, Casio continues to grow, and I for one am always excited to wait to see what they're going to come up with next. Well, I hope you enjoyed that and found it as interesting as I did, and it helps you better understand where these companies come from when you see what their background is. And yeah, what a great innovator of products, and long may that continue. So let's carry on the theme of Casio now. Now, when I first joined Keysound, I suppose, I don't think it's unfair to say this, I was guilty of assuming that Casio would be the poor relation of the 5 major brands that Keysound deals with. But how wrong was I? Because they definitely have made their mark in this music industry, and I was introduced to a range of keyboards called the CTX series. We had the CTX700, CTX3000 and the flagship, the CTX5000. So impressed was I with this CTX series that I took a CTX5000 home. Now bear in mind, this is, although this is the flagship model, this is still a sub £400 keyboard. So I took it home and I spent many hours putting 64 registrations together. Now these are 64 registrations for 64 well-known pieces of music that many people will play. I've spent time blending the sounds together, balancing them, putting effects on, putting the right style, all the things that are involved in putting a professional registration together. And I did it because I was so impressed with that keyboard, and I can hand on heart say never before have I been so inspired to spend so many hours putting some software together for what is basically classed as an entry-level keyboard range. But as we said with the Korg on last month's edition, you know, these are so much more these days than entry-level keyboards. So what I've done is put a little amalgamation of clips together that I filmed during lockdown. You will know it's during lockdown because, like most fellas, for some unknown reason my shaver didn't seem to work properly during lockdown, but hey, you'll have to excuse that. So I've put together a few clips, so sit back, enjoy some examples of our Keysound Bonus software, which incidentally, if anybody buys a CTX 3000 or 5000 from us, they are welcome to have this bonus registration pack. So sit back, have a listen in the company of myself and the Casio CTX5000. Well, on to this next segment of the show, and I'm really pleased to say that I've got another phone call this month from my old mate Mike Hall. By the way, I do use the term old loosely. Mike seems to have been around forever as far as I'm concerned in this music business. He's, first of all, a great friend of mine. He's an incredible musician as well, and he's been a great ambassador to organs and keyboards over the years. But as Mike said in the first episode, he's now very happily settled with his Korg Pa1000 at home, and I'm pleased to say that we've got another offering from Mike tonight. But what I want you to pay particular attention to here is the way Mike actually plays this piece of music. Now, I don't think he's going to be offended when I say this, but he plays it in a relatively simple way, but makes a beautiful sound and a great end result. And this is something, as customers, you have to be careful of. It's very easy. We've all done it in the past, myself included. You watch somebody demonstrate something and their fingers are flying all over the place. They're playing fistful of notes. Of course, it's going to sound good in the hands of that type of player. Any product will. What you need to know is, will it sound nice how most of us play? Now, most of us play, and again, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way to any of you watching, but most of us play in a relatively simple way. We play one, maybe two notes in the right hand, and we play and hold our chords here on an arranger type keyboard. And there is nothing wrong with that at all. But what you want to do is achieve the maximum result you can from your ability as a player. And I think that's what Mike illustrates beautifully here as he plays an arrangement of a lovely piece of music. I'll let Mike introduce it, but I know this is one of his favourites, one of his partner's favourites. So I'll say no more, but I'll hand you back to the very youthful, I think I got away with that one, friend of mine, Mr. Mike Hall.
Thank you, Paul. Well, you know, even after having the Korg now for over 12 months, I still really look forward to switching it on and experimenting, playing around with different sounds, registrations, and that's what I've done with this next number. It's actually a favourite number of my partner Ronnie. She absolutely loves this number. It's from Breakfast at Tiffany's and it's Moon River.
Well, welcome to this next section where I've got a lovely little tip for you. First of all, I need to just explain why I'm doing this. Let me take you back to my organ playing days and the early days of keyboards. You always could find a button on there that said sustain. And we all worked out after a while what it did. It sustained the notes when you had it on. So, for example, when you release a note, instead of it cutting dead, it would linger and slowly fade out. That's what sustain is. And the pianists amongst us will understand that when you learn to play the piano, you are taught to use the sustain pedal, which is an integral part of the piano. But I do notice, watching a lot of people play, that very few people, home players who play keyboard, use a sustain pedal. And I understand that. The more things we've got to think about when we're playing, sometimes the more it blows your mind, so you leave well alone. But there are times, imagine you're playing a nice little slow piano piece or a very lush string piece. As soon as you release a note, you don't want it to cut dead. You want some sustain. Sustain on a note will help those notes blend together and make the overall effect much smoother and much more pleasing to the ear. So let's have a look at how we do it. It's not difficult at all, I promise you. I'm going to start on my PA4X. What I'm going to show you applies to the whole of the Korg PA series. And then we're going to swap to a Yamaha and we're going to show you exactly the same procedure, how you do it on a Yamaha. In fact, you can do this on any instrument where you have access to edit the attack, decay and release of a sound. At this point, don't panic about that terminology. We'll explain it as we go along. But just give me 30 seconds or so, swap the cameras over, because I want you to see this close up, how we do it, how we're going to add sustain to individual voices. So here we are at the Korg Pa4X. And what I would suggest you do to start with is just choose a piano sound. Why? Because a piano lends itself very well to having a little bit of sustain put on it. And for the purpose of this demonstration, I've got the piano sound across the whole keyboard, but don't let that put you off, because if you use the keyboard in split mode, so i.e. use automatic styles with your left hand, it doesn't matter. The part that still features upper one will have the sustain applied to it. So there is no different to the concept there. So we've chosen our piano. Now, if I was to just stab some notes and release them, there is no sustain. Now, don't be confused with reverb. There's a little bit of ambience, so the sound rings out a little bit there, but that is reverb, which we use to bring a sound to life or to simulate playing an instrument in a certain environment. That is not sustain, and we'll talk about reverb some other time. But to apply sustain, here's how we do it on Korg. We press menu, and we then want the top right hand corner options, which is labelled track controls. We press that. You may not immediately see that screen that I'm seeing, because there are three little tabs along the bottom. There's mode, drum edit and sound edit, and it is sound edit tab that you need. Then you should see that screen. And at the top here in the top left hand corner, I can see those three magic words I mentioned earlier: attack, decay and release. And it is the release that we're concentrating on today. So what is release? Release means when you release the note, how long does that note go on for before fading away? In other words, that's our old-fashioned sustain button, but this time we've got it as a variable dial. So at the minute it's set to 0, which is why we have no sustain. Let's move it up, say, using the wheel here, let's take it round to around value 40. Now we've got some sustain. You can hear that note lingers on before it starts to fade away. Let's put it up to something like 56. Now we've got a lovely sustain that's helping that note ring on, and what it's doing, it's blending the notes together. So as I move from note to note, you've got that carry on of the note, which helps link the two together, and it makes the end result more pleasing and much smoother. If I was to take that release right off, just to give you the example, and play the same thing, you can hear immediately everything's a lot more disjointed. Put the release back on. You don't have to be too critical with the value, but I've put it back to 56. So that's how we add sustain. We can go on and we can save that as a user voice if we want with the sustain on. Try experimenting with different voices, but don't try and put sustain on instruments that wouldn't naturally have any sustain, things like trumpets, saxophones. Steer clear of those. Pianos, strings, obviously electric pianos, maybe a little bit on a guitar, but not too much. But certainly strings, if you want to create that nice Mantovani shimmering string effect, then add some reverb. You may also find, just as a little tip, you may need a different value on strings to what you do on piano, but I'll leave that for you to experiment. So that's how we do it on Korg. Let's look at an example now using strings on a Yamaha instrument. Good to be back with you. A bit of a dash this because I'm now in the shop, as if by magic. But what we're going to do now is, as promised, show you how to add sustain, or shall we get used to saying the word release? You choose whichever you want, to a sound on a Yamaha series. For this illustration, I'm going to use the Genos here in the shop. If you remember, on the Korg, we used a piano. This time we're going to use some strings, but exactly the same principle and what we're trying to achieve. Okay, so here we are at the Genos. I've got the main screen open, which showing that at the moment on right one we have the CFX Concert Grand. That's Yamaha's sample of their own CFX Grand piano. So we're pretty much in the same position we were with the Korg, in that we're on right one we've got a piano sound. I'm going to change that this time just to illustrate we can put sustain on other sounds. Tap where it says Grand Piano. I'm going to go down to the strings category on the left, and I'll leave it on the first option, which is called Kino Strings. Nice string sound. But absolutely zero sustain. Again, we've got some reverb, we've got that little bit of ambience on there, but we haven't got any sustain. So how do we enter the sustain here? We press the menu button, which is top right hand corner of these 6 white illuminated buttons here, and we get into the menu. We've got page 1 and page 2, or menu 1, menu 2. Make sure you're on menu 2, and the option in the top left hand corner says voice edit. Now if you remember, on the Korg it said sound edit. This says voice edit. Exactly the same thing, just different terminology. So we press voice edit, and we have some options down the left hand side, a little bit like the tabs along the bottom on the Korg. We need to go to sound because it's the sound we want to edit. And I can see we've got cut off, resonance. Oh, there's our 3 friends again: attack, decay and release. And obviously it's release that we're looking at once again, so highlight that section. Now you can either type a number in, or I find the easiest way is just to turn the wheel. And if we set that to 40 odd like we did on the Korg. Now have a listen to that lovely, lush, long sustain. So when we release, the sound goes on. Once again, you're just going to have to experiment and find the value that suits you. What I think is great here on the Genos, we have a little icon at the top that says compare. There's a image of a pair of scales, weighing scales above it, and this is for you to check between the 2 options now. So I've set the release to 41. If I press that compare button, it greys this section out now, and we can hear the original sound. So no sustain, just reverb. If we untick the compare button, if you like, this all illuminates again. get to hear our version with sustain. So again, very, very similar to do with the as we did with the Korg. What I think is brilliant on here, you've got that compare button so you can actually hear the two sounds. If you go to exit that now, it'll ask whether you want to save. You can save that as a user voice of your own and give it a name. That's the choice is yours. In this case, I'm going to press don't save rather. So that's how we add sustain on both Korg and Yamaha instruments. Incidentally, we're doing it on a Genos, exactly the same on PSR SX700 and 900. Well, I have to say I'm really looking forward to this next part of tonight's show because I get the chance to introduce a very dear friend of mine. We go back an awful long way, probably too far that we'd care to mention really, but we were first together in the late 80s when we were both on the road for Yamaha, and this gentleman went on to great things with the Yamaha company and then latterly moved on to Casio to take control of their keyboard and piano division, the company that you learnt all about earlier on in the show. You see, we don't just throw this show together. Now, the gentleman in question is Mr. Andy Carvill, and as I say, I know many of you will have met Andy and got to know Andy through many of the festivals and events over the years. Andy has got this great knack of being able to impart information to people and pass on hints and tips, but in a nice, easy to understand and relaxed way. So it's our pleasure that Andy's agreed to join us over the next few months to pass on some of those little pearls of wisdom that he's got. So I'm just going to move the cameras yet again into another room. I'm starting to get the look from my wife. I think I'm going to have to let her have the house back at some point, but hey, here we go. Let's carry on regardless. So we'll just move the cameras downstairs and Andy will do the first of his little teaching sessions. What I will point out, it doesn't matter what keyboard you own. These are general tips about playing. Andy's going to be using his own Korg Pa1000, but as I say, regardless of what instrument you have, this will be relevant. I know you're going to enjoy it, so just give us a few seconds to get reset and we'll hand you over to Mr. Andy Carvill.
Hello, thank you Paul for that nice introduction there, and a very warm welcome to Keysound TV. It's lovely to be here in this professional dining studio here to record a video for you. Today I'm playing the Korg Pa1000. And I'm going to be taking a closer look at the style section. Now, I'm playing the Korg Pa1000, but you may have a different keyboard at home, and a lot of these topics, these hints and tips, will apply just as much to your keyboard as it does indeed to this one. So we're talking about styles, accompaniment styles, and over the years when I've been playing keyboards in different places, many people have got a little level of confusion about the styles, how to get the best out of the styles and exactly what the functions actually do. The style controls here are actually situated just to the left hand side of the control panel, and what I've got is I've got three main sections. Those are introductions, the variations of the style, and on this particular instrument I've got 4 variations. That's quite usual. You may, if you have a smaller keyboard, perhaps have 2 variations, but on here we have 4. And then we have the endings to play with. The one I haven't mentioned is fill-ins, which actually automatically happen as we go from variation to variation on this particular instrument. And we also have a break control, which is a more empty sort of fill-in, where the drummer just takes a little rest, or the entire band takes a little rest. It's a quieter fill. So let's take a look. I've selected here a style called Pop Cha-Cha. Now, this instrument has got over 400 different styles built inside, so there's a huge range to choose. All genres of music, be it jazz, be it ballroom dancing, all sorts of different styles are already built in here. And this is fantastic because it turns your simple left-hand chords into a full orchestral arrangement. Sounds absolutely stunning. Now, Pop Cha-Cha, and I'm going to choose this time on this instrument introduction number 1. And number 1 on a Korg is always quite a long introduction, and here's tip number 1. When you're using these introductions, just let the introduction play. Don't play along with it. I've seen lots of people who start to play in the middle of an introduction, and invariably it goes terribly wrong because that introduction is playing its own little song, its own little arrangement to introduce your piece of music. So you need to start to play at the end of the introduction. How do you know when the end of the introduction is coming up? Well, on a Korg it's very simple, and there's a good chance your instrument may have this at home. But in my little screen here, I get a countdown. So it starts off, if this introduction was, for example, an 8-bar introduction, it would start off with -8, and it would count me down until I start to play when it says 0. That's when I actually start to play. So here we go. This is intro 1 on Pop Cha-Cha, and it's got an 8-bar introduction. I know that because I've played it before, and it goes like this. Now you can see, I can see in the screen here, my little minus countdown. This is when I should start playing. There's the style, and this time it's variation number 2. So I can now change through these variations, and as usually happens, variation 1 is very simple, variation 4 is very full. Doesn't necessarily mean variation 4 is always the best option to choose, but you can experiment with them. And actually there's a very key point here. People don't do this very often, but listen to the styles on their own. Get to know the style, because you want to know when to use different variations and which variation you actually want to select. It's a very important point. And also, there's not just one cha-cha on here. This is a pop cha-cha. There is a ballroom cha-cha. There's different variations, a disco cha-cha. Which one do I choose? Just listen to them and try your piece of music with it, and then select the best one out of the options you have available. So this time I'm going to do that again, and we're going to have intro number 1, and then I'm going to start to play at the end of that introduction. Here we go. There's the introduction. So, you notice there, we played all the way through the introduction, just let the keyboard sound fantastic on its own, and then I started to play at the end of the introduction. Great. Now, when you come to the end of a piece of music, you press one of the endings. And on this instrument, I have 3 endings. You may have a different number, but there is again a long ending, a medium ending, and a very short ending. Which one do I choose? Well, you can actually choose whichever you like. So once again, get used to them, try them out, experiment with them. Now, one thing I should point out here is a very special Korg feature. To my knowledge, this is only available on Korg instruments. I may be wrong, but intro 2 is actually quite special. I've said up to now, just let the introduction play itself, because it's a very special arrangement, because I don't know which chords it's playing, etc. If I choose intro number 2, I can actually input the different chord sequence, and so I know what I'm playing, and I can play along with it, which is great. So this time I'm going to still with Pop Cha-Cha. I'm going to choose intro number 2, and I'm going to play a chord, and I'm going to play a little bit with the right hand, just to accompany myself like this. Now we're coming to our ending. So I can choose the long ending, it can play itself, or I can put my own ending into ending 2, which is what I'm going to do. Here we go. Like that. So the intros and endings are fantastic. Most of the time let them do the work, but if you want to get a little involved with a Korg instrument, choose intro and ending number 2. The third option, which is also a very valid option, is a simple count-in. So this gives you a 1 bar, 4 beats counting in. So let's play Pop Cha-Cha again, just using the 3rd introduction, and we get this. 3, and there's the style. And I can start playing along. I'll just do that again. Short ending. So, key point here, experiment with the styles and get to know the styles, because you need to choose the one that works best for the piece of music that you're playing. It's almost with a lot of today's keyboards. Not only do you need to practice playing, but you need to practice the different functions that are actually available to you. It's a very important point. One final little feature I'd just like to show you is the break. The break, as I mentioned before, is an empty fill. So here's our style playing, and I'm now going to have a little break. So it's like a special drum-only little fill. Here's ending number 1. So, get to know your styles. One also very useful feature is actually linking the style variation to your preset sounds that you have available. It's a very great thing to do because, let's face it, we're all concentrating on the music that we're playing, getting the notes right, getting the chords right, and pushing the buttons at the same time can get a little bit involved. With this feature, as I change the variations available in the left hand here, I also change the sound. Let's set that up. So now, as I go through my different variations, the sounds in the screen here also change. So let's play that same little piece of music, and we're going to start on variation 4 with the woodwind and mute. I'm going to do introduction 3, very short introduction because you've heard this introduction before. Here we go. Here's now I'm going to go to variation 3, and this will automatically change the sound to octave piano. Variation 1, and we'll change to an alto saxophone. Back to variation 4. And there was the short ending, variation number 3. We also can actually add some additional voices into our different special effects and voices into our styles, and that's from this little section here marked pads. And what I've got here is 4 pads, simply marked 1, 2, 3, 4, and just listen to what happens when I press button number 1. It's a cymbal crash, very simple. Button number 2, I get an extra piano vamp. Button number 3, I get some marimbas. Button number 4, some extra percussion. So I can add these buttons to our styles to enhance what's already going on. So let's just play that little piece of music. It's a simple piece called Cup of Cha-Cha, and we'll start with introduction number 1, and we'll go to variation 2, and let's see what happens. So there we go. The styles really are a fantastic enhancement to your playing, and you've got so much choice, over 420 of these styles built inside for you to experiment. But the key point here, get to know the styles and get to know the one that suits the piece of music you want to play. It's a great thing to do. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Thank you very much.
Andy, thank you so much for that dining studio. Never mind. Very informative that, and we look forward to more contributions from Andy in the forthcoming months. So now I'm going to hand over to myself in yet another room of the house where we're going to show you a brand new product from Yamaha, which we're very excited about. Hi and welcome to this next section of the programme, and I'm really going to enjoy this 10 minutes because, you know, I love showing people new products and some of the great things they will do. And this is a new product which has arrived at the showroom. It's called a Yamaha DGX670, and this follows on from the previous model, the 660. And for many years Yamaha have produced these DGX instruments. Now, what is a DGX instrument? Well, it's a hybrid product. It's a cross between a piano, because as you can see, this is a full 88-note keyboard, but it also has many of the exciting features we find on modern arranger keyboards. So we've got styles, we've got record facilities, we've got USB, ability to play audio files, full variations, intros, endings, all those things we've come to expect from an arranger keyboard you will find in the DGX. But if you like to play piano, it plays nicely as a piano. As I said, 88 notes. It does in fact feature Yamaha's GHS graded hammer action keyboard. And if you are starting out on the journey of playing the piano, or at the early grades, if you're into taking grades, or if you're a home hobby pianist, then this piano keyboard will accommodate you perfectly. I can't sit here truthfully and say that this quality of piano feel keyboard will take you through the higher grades, and certainly, you know, 5, 6, 7 and 8 onwards. But that's not what this instrument is about. It's not for the serious pianist. This is for somebody who wants to have a go or dabbles a little bit with the piano, but also wants to be able to fall back on the features you find on an arranger keyboard. Now, if you cast your mind back to last month, it seems a long time ago now, but we had Luke Edwards from Korg, and he was showing you the Korg XE20, which was a piano version of the EK50 arranger keyboard that he showed you. And really, that's a similar product to this. The XE20 Korg sort of matches really with the Yamaha equivalent, the DGX. What I love about this, and you can probably see it from the other camera, we have a 4.3-inch full colour display here, and that is particularly useful when we enter the piano room feature. Now, piano room is something that we find on the Clavinovas, the CLPs and the CVP series, and they've incorporated it here in the DGX. So if we press piano room, as the name would suggest, this is now all about the piano. So I can see at the minute we've got this beautiful full colour image of the Yamaha CFX Grand. That's Yamaha's flagship acoustic grand piano, and that's the sample you're going to hear. But we can then scroll through and go through different pianos. So we've got the Pop Grand, we've got Honky Tonk Piano, and we've got various electric pianos in there. Also on the picture, in this case, there it's showing it on a stage with some nice spotlights. That's not just for effect. You can actually alter the environment. So let's go back to our CFX Grand, and at the minute we're showing it on a stage. But if I was to alter the environment, I can put it into a room, I can have no environment, I can have it in a concert hall, or I can have it in a cathedral. And as well as changing the picture, it actually changes the ambience. Do you remember earlier we talked about reverb? Well, reverb is part of it, but you know that sound behaves in a different way in different rooms. So if you set it to cathedral and you play a note, then it's going to ring on much longer than if you set it into a standard room. So you can adjust the piano there. I can even open and close the lid. This is fantastic because, and the little picture will show me exactly where I am. So at the moment the lid is open full. I can change that to a half position, or I can close it. And that in turn, again, it's not just about pretty graphics. That will actually alter the characteristics of that piano just as it would with an acoustic piano. So what I'm going to do just for a second is just quickly swap the cameras around and just play you a couple of examples on the piano. And what I will be doing is going into the settings, and here you can alter the master tuning for the piano. We can alter the brightness. Now that's a really useful feature. So if you took the CFX Grand, I'm going to play it you just as the standard sample, but then we'll show you what effect if we put it nice and bright. We get a sort of more rock piano type sound, or we take the brightness into the minus figures and then we get this lovely warm mellow piano. Of course, different piano tones will suit different pieces of music. You can alter the touch to suit the way you play, and you can alter all those little additional, let's call them noises, that go on inside a piano cabinet. Things like the resonance and the noise of the hammers. You can adjust all that accordingly. So that's piano room. Let's give you one or two examples. Well, there you go. That was piano room, and as I say, what a superb piano it is. So beautiful to sit and play. I have got a sustain pedal connected. Obviously, you need that if you're going to play piano style. But there's a lot of non-pianists, I'm sure, watching that would like to hear some of the keyboard features. So what we do, we press the piano room button to exit, and then we go back to a more familiar looking screen for an arranger keyboard, where we have the name of the sound at the top, we have the name of the style. If we've got any songs loaded, be it a MIDI song or an audio song, we can get the title up there. We can see the layered voice because we can mix two sounds together. So what I'm going to do is actually shut up. Who said hooray? And I'm just going to sit and play you some musical examples using some of the styles. That in turn will show you some of the great sounds on here. Just point of note, we have super articulated voices in here. So when you hear things like the guitar, listen for the little slides on the fret and the little hammer off noises. All those little things that as a keyboard player up to a few years ago, we were just so envious of the real artists because we couldn't make all those noises on a guitar. Now we can. We've even got some form of interactive accompaniment on here. So some of the accompaniments will change the variation depending on how you're playing the keyboard. It's just so intelligent, and it's amazing that it does it. So if you're playing nice and gently, it will stick to, say, variation A and B. You start playing a bit faster, harder, louder, more notes, then it will recognize that and it will take you to one of the busier variations. On some of the styles, and I'll give you an example of that, if you just strike your left hand a little bit harder, you can have things like cymbal crashes, but you're in control, because it's only when you stab the chord that you get that cymbal crash. So sit back, enjoy the next 5 minutes or so, some musical examples of the DGX670. So I'm sorry to interrupt your viewing of the demonstration, but I wanted to just bring you this little bit of news, because at the time of filming this video, I'm also working on the DGX670 songbook. This is something that you saw from the first episode when I used it with the PA4X. Keysound has this reputation of providing this unique data for both the iPad and the keyboard to work hand in hand. And yeah, I'm pleased to say that as of yesterday, I've just completed the DGX670 songbook. And basically the deal is you need to provide the iPad and you need to provide the Songbook Plus software. But then we can install the data for both the iPad, and up to date I've got over 250 titles for the DGX670 and the appropriate registrations for the keyboard as well. So we will provide you the data for the iPad and the data for the keyboard. This is only available, and I want to stress this, to people who buy the DGX670 from us. So I hope that's a nice little bonus for anybody considering purchasing one of these. Wonderful bit of software, as you've seen before, and I'm sure in future episodes you will see our songbook data in action once again. Back to myself. That's it. Another month is over. I can't believe where the time has gone. Thanks to everybody who's contributed in making tonight's show possible. Most of all, thanks to you for watching. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you've found it informative, and we look forward to joining you again next month. Next month, we've got a nice little feature all about keyboard accessories. We'll be explaining the various types of pedals, switch pedals, volume pedals. We'll also be talking about headphones and the differences between headphones. So I look forward to putting that together for you. In the meantime, stay safe, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you.